Good morning and thank you for joining us on Africa This Morning. I'm Beryl Ooro. Let's start the bulletin with a look at the headlines.
Ukraine crisis. Pro-Russian forces take control of Sevastopol.
Calling on all Kenyans to join us in this appeal to the President to declare a national disaster for elephants and rhinos. Give them national treasure status.
Poaching menace. Conservationists urge President Kenyatta to declare poaching a national disaster. African migrants. 500 people forced their way into the North African enclave of Melilla. Amazing talent. Spanish artist uses antenna to hear color as musical notes.
Following the cessation of Crimea from Ukraine, pro-Russian activists, some of them armed, have stormed the headquarters of the Ukrainian Navy in the Crimean city of Sevastopol. Russian flags have been seen flying from buildings, and several Ukrainian servicemen have been leaving the base.
Russian flag flying at an entrance to Ukraine's naval headquarters in the Crimean port of Sevastopol as pro-Russian forces took control of at least some of the base without armed resistance. It was the clearest sign so far that Russian forces and so-called self-defense units of mainly unarmed volunteers who support them have been taking control of Ukrainian military facilities across the Black Peninsula. The fate of Ukrainians' military personnel at the Sevastopol compound is unknown. Around a dozen Ukrainian servicemen, unarmed and in civilian clothes, walked out of the Ukrainian naval headquarters after it was taken over by pro-Russian forces. No shots were fired. Crimeans voted at the weekend to leave Ukraine and join Russia, and the peaceful handover of military facilities to Moscow's control has been a major concern after one Ukrainian was killed in a shooting at a military facility in Crimea's main city, Simferopol, on Tuesday.
About 500 people forced their way into Spain's northern African enclave of Melilla, the largest numbers to storm the border in almost a decade as increasing naval patrols discourage entry by sea. The Moroccan Interior Ministry said nearly 300 were arrested and at least 28 were injured. A Spanish police video showed on Tuesday hundreds of people running along the Moroccan border moments before they were said to have climbed over the border fence between the two countries. Spain has two enclaves in Morocco, Ceuta and Melilla, and migrants from all over Africa regularly try to reach them, mostly by climbing the triple barriers that separate them from Morocco. Deaths and injuries are common. Making the most of the dense fog to sneak up to the crossing and climb over the high fence, a total of 1,100 people according to Spanish figures and about 600 according to Morocco make a rush across the border throughout the night and morning. 29 migrants were treated by emergency services in Melilla. Migrants throwing sticks and stones ignored warnings of security forces on the fence and injured 5 police officers by throwing stones. In February, the European Union asked Spain to explain why police fired rubber bullets in warning when a group of African migrants tried to wade and swim to Ceuta. 15 men died when the shots caused panic among the immigrants. Migrants enter the enclaves without official documents, often without belongings, and wearing just flimsy shoes and shorts, and are housed in temporary centers until their identity can be determined or until they are moved. A wildlife conservation organization in Kenya has appealed to the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta to declare poaching a national disaster. Wildlife Direct says that will be the best move towards bringing to an end the ongoing menace that is greatly threatening wildlife population in Kenya. Ebru Africa's news reporter Agnes Kakunga with more on that story.
Between January 2014 and March 2014, at least 16 elephants and rhinos have been killed by poachers inside Kenya's national parks and game reserves. The high demand for ivory in the Asian market has continued to threaten these endangered species, with poachers showing no or little fear of tough new laws designed to stem the wave of killings. With these killings that are depriving Kenya's wildlife sector of the precious animals, there are calls for the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta to declare ivory poaching a national disaster.
We cannot afford to lose what we have, and the only person who has got the authority is the prime leader of our country. He was elected, we support him, and we call on him now, I call on him now, personally, to take the next step and get this under control. It is not an impossible task, and I believe with the right leadership, the right management, this poaching crisis could be brought to heel very, very quickly, less than 6 months.
Calling on all Kenyans to join us in this appeal to the President to declare a national disaster for elephants and rhinos, give them national treasure status, and invoke all of the extraordinary measures that a president can invoke to protect these animals.
Says that there were 380.
Wildlife Direct, a conservation organization in Kenya which has been carrying out a global campaign dubbed Hands Off Our Elephants, has made it clear that the fight against poaching in Kenya is not easy, considering that the Wildlife Service has only 2,700 rangers. This number is not enough to guard all national parks across the country.
With whatever good intentions that there are out there in the public institutions, there is sufficiently enough evidence that they are not producing the kind of results that we need to see. It is ineffective currently what is happening in terms of how we're protecting our wildlife. How do we know? Because rhinos are dying. Right? The evidence is visible and it is in our space.
Some years back, there was the shoot-to-kill order that was given to scare away poachers. Though the threat was never exercised, it resulted to a decline in the number of elephants and rhino killings. The Kenya Wildlife Service and law enforcement agencies are coming under increasing pressure to step up their investigations and use all available tools to bring poachers to justice.
What we're seeing is a doubling in the rate of rhino poaching. We're also seeing the failure of the state organization responsible for wildlife to share information openly to Kenyans. We know that elephants are being slaughtered around the country, but very little information is being released to the Kenyan public. And this makes it very difficult for the public to respond appropriately.
On a first count,
last month, a Kenyan court handed out a record sentence to a Chinese ivory smuggler, the first person to be convicted under the new laws, after he was arrested carrying an ivory tusk weighing 3.4 kilograms. He was ordered to pay $233,000 or be jailed for 7 years. Africa's elephant population is estimated at 500,000 compared to 1.2 million in 1980 and 10 million in 1900, and they are listed as vulnerable. Ivory is highly sought in the Asian country's black market for jewelry and decorative objects.
New displaced persons started arriving at the site of the Bangui airport from Monday night following a new outbreak of violence in the capital of the Central African Republic with deplorable living conditions.
Heavy fighting erupted near the airport in Central African Republic's capital Bangui. The fighting was the latest episode in a cycle of religious violence that has displaced an estimated 1 million people from the former French colony and killed at least 2,000 others.
Yes, we buried people yesterday, and now there are people at the hospital. They are injured people. Some of them are children. Even children are injured.
Many of the attackers came shooting and forcing people out of their homes. This led to people taking adverse measures and using any means possible to run to their safety.
They were close to here. They fired. People ran away. We can't take it anymore. The situation is untenable. This is why we are asking the international community and people to help us bring back peace.
International forces, including allied units of the Chadian military and African peacekeepers, have evacuated tens of thousands from their areas, the areas which are under control of the anti-Balaka forces, in the absence of government troops.
South Africa's Foreign Minister Maite Mashabane said the expulsion of Rwandan diplomats in connection with a raid on the house of an exiled Rwandan general living in Johannesburg was in accordance with South African diplomatic policy. He says South Africa will not tolerate criminality or lawlessness from anywhere in the world.
The first BRICS outreach.
South Africa expelled 3 Rwandan diplomats it linked to the raid, and Rwanda has retaliated by ordering out 6 South African envoys. Speaking at a news conference in Pretoria, Mashabane said her government's stance on this action was clear and well within their rights.
South Africa will not tolerate any acts of criminality or lawlessness emanating from anyone from anywhere in the world.
The row strained ties between 2 African states involved in efforts to bring peace to Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where South Africa has troops in a UN brigade that fought last year against rebels, whom UN experts said received support from Rwanda, an allegation that Kigali has denied.
Even in the case of Rwanda and South Africa, we follow the same norms. Whatever action that South Africa would have undertaken in the past few days, we were unemotional.
The minister said it would be counterproductive to provide any specifics for the ongoing investigations.
I would be wrong to now start laying out progress that our law enforcement agencies are making. I am appealing to all of us to remain calm and allow them to do their work.
Armed men broke into Johannesburg, home of former Rwandan Army Chief General Faustin Kayumba, an exiled critic of Rwandan President Paul Kagame, in March this year. Rwandan ambassador to South Africa said Pretoria has shown no proof of Kigali's involvement in the attacks against exiles.
The United States suspended operations of Syria's embassy in Washington and its consulates and told diplomats and staff who are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents to leave the country. State Department officials said while embassy and consular activities were affected, the United States was not severing diplomatic relations with Syria despite the failed peace initiatives to end the 3-year-old war.
The United States Tuesday suspended operations of the Syrian embassy in Washington, D.C. and 2 other consulates, telling diplomats and staff who are not U.S. citizens to leave the country. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the time has come.
140,000 people killed, more than 10,000 children, millions of refugees, millions of internally displaced people. People attacked by their own government with gas, people tortured and killed by the thousands.
The U.S. says Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is responsible for atrocities against Syrians.
We just felt the idea that this embassy is sitting here with representation that we could take seriously is an insult, and we closed it. It's that simple.
The timing poses problems for one Canadian hoping to head to Syria.
I'm a Canadian, and my son is a U.S. citizen, and we are both going to visit Syria. I've traveled to 194 countries. I have 4 left, and Syria is one of them. For obvious reasons, I waited till the last moment, so to get this, and 2 o'clock is when they close.
Efforts by the U.S. and Russia to broker a peace settlement in Syria are now further strained with heightened tensions between Moscow and Washington over Ukraine.
And on a lighter note, the acrobatic sport of parkour is increasingly popular in Tehran, and women in the Islamic Republic are rising above social constraints to practice the sport with dedication and determination. Here's the story.
In this park in northern Tehran, a dozen girls meet every week. They stretch and warm up before the jumping starts. These women are part of Iran's parkour movement. In conservative Iran, where women's sports are usually practiced indoors, the group is a novelty.
We don't care what others say about us. Sometimes when we're exercising, they criticize us by saying that this sport is not for girls. Girls are supposed to knit or sew. They can't imagine that a girl can exercise just like a boy.
Popular in the West, parkour is an urban sport that involves running, jumping, and climbing over obstacles with acrobatic body movements. That is no easy feat in a country which obliges women to wear loose clothing and cover their hair with a scarf.
I'm worried that my clothes move and show my body. I'm scared to lose my headscarf.
Despite the constraints, the girls are determined to do it and rise above gender stereotypes.
For many people, parkour is only for men, and they believe no woman can do it, especially free running. But our girls are proof that they can do it like boys, and sometimes they're even better.
The dedicated train 3 times a week, and each move is practiced to perfection. Here, the gym is well equipped to cushion their falls. The number of girls attending the parkour course increases every day, and there are now nearly 300 women training in this gym.
We used to train in a park, and after a while we were given this room. The aim was for us to learn from others and also to teach them, so we could all progress. Then this course was formed. At first the number was limited, but little by little it grew. During summer, or the days when there are more students, this room is filled with girls.
For these girls, their dream would be to practice their sport competitively on a national level.
A Spanish artist, colorblind since birth, uses a special antenna connected to his head to hear color as musical notes. Let's take a look at that amazing ability.
Most colorblind people perceive some hues, even if defectively. But artist Neil Harbison has achromatopsia, which means he sees no color. Though thanks to an antenna known as an eyeborg, Harbison's ears have taken on the role of discerning color. The eyeborg detects different parts of the color spectrum, interprets them, and then transmits messages to Harbison's brain, which translates the visual signals into sounds that are sensed by the cochlea in his ears.
So instead of using my ears to hear color, I use my bone, and then my inner ear hears color. So it's a different type of sound perception. It's visual sounds that go through bone conduction.
Born in the UK and raised in Spain, Harbison developed the device with a fellow university student. In 2004, he had the eyeborg permanently attached to his head, and since then he's had 10 different antennas.
So when I look at art, I can hear the art piece, so to me painters have become composers.
Harbison recently took his oral color perception a step further. He conducted a choir and string quartet in a musical light show in Spain, using colors instead of written music.
And still on music, Polish musician Paweł Roman-Suzuk, a fervent lover of contemporary music, leads the group Small Instruments, which composes melodies with toys as well as instruments he creates himself.
It's a delicate balance. A dozen pianos are precariously stacked up, one on top of the other. It's a novel way to show off a collection of 60 miniature pianos here at the Capitol Theatre in Wrocław, Western Poland. The smallest has just 4 keys, while the oldest was created over a century ago. They hail from both Europe and the United States and are all in good working order. Their owner is using them to push the boundaries of sound.
Mogą stanowić tworzywo I taką substancję dźwiękową dla...
Basically, these instruments are designed for children, but they can also serve to create contemporary music for music lovers who are open to new experiences.
Jakkolwiek otwartych na nowe doświadczenia dźwiękowe.
Over the past decade, Paweł has collected over 500 different miniature instruments, and he even builds his own in his workshop. Along with several friends, the classically trained guitarist has created the Small Instruments Orchestra to showcase the sounds of his collection.
You can easily imagine how a violin or piano will sound. But it's difficult to imagine the sound of a miniature piano, a ukulele, a blow organ, an ocarina, or something I've invented myself. There's also room on the market for this type of music, although I doubt we'll become pop stars.
The musical magic happens when his unique orchestra takes to the stage.
Miniature instruments produce very simple, childlike melodies, and in the theatre this can inspire the creation of magical new worlds.
Interest in the big sound created on small instruments is growing among theatre directors, and CDs are selling well. Pavo is also pushing ahead with his ultimate dream, a museum focused on small instruments, especially his beloved singular pianos.
And on that inspirational note, we come to the end of the Bulletin on Africa this morning. Join us next as we take a look at what is inspiring the conversation on the social media platform in our segment on Trend.